Alright, hi, I'm Gloria Bana and I'm currently trying to do a coaching consultancy business in a space which I'm not going to talk about because of privacy reasons, and this is a secondary channel. But I'm using Mr. Charlie Morgan's Imperium Academy and the course that's present in it as the way to get rich, and it is working to some degree. Now, he basically made a 24-hour coaching mindset module. There's like 6 modules, 6 weeks of content roughly. So you need to take that in account. But he made like the mindset module roughly 24 hours. So it is very intensive and it is very high quality. And I just wanted to give some of my thoughts on how you can get the most out of it, how I've been trying to get the most out of it, and it has been working to some degree. Whether it works even better after I made this video, after I integrated all of these things fully, that's another matter, right? So uh, for context, at the end of the mindset module, he basically asks you to make a self-transcendence workbook, which is basically something like this, which I'm holding right now. Yeah. And this basically is a collection of all of the people I look up to. I'm sure you can see Nietzsche, Dakwon Soho, Alfred Adler, Edward Albertine, Carl Sagan, many people, many strategists, many philosophers, many strong men, things like that, right? And these are all people that I to some degree respect, and hence me putting my photo next to them and manifesting that into some degree, and literally just looking at that type of reality is me getting closer to that, and I have been getting closer to that, and you can say it's placebo, but it is working. Okay, placebo isn't bad. Now, he has made an extremely, wait a second, yeah, he has made an extremely detailed, roughly 20-page booklet, and he tells you to print it out, and he tells you to just update it a little, keep printing out, keep printing, and keep making different versions, etc. And I'm not going to show too much, but it's basically the what's it called, the lessons from the mindset module, the things that you need to do. So like read it daily, read it in the night, read it in the morning, remember what you're doing this for, etc. And then your goal reality, which is like basically the images that you want in your goal reality, and overall before and after image. So this is what are all of the things that you've done in your past, and what are all the things that you're planning to do, that you're going to get, and who are the person that you're going to become or are becoming, right? You really highlight the traits, the style, the routine, the kind of mentors you have, all of these things, and hence you start manifesting that, and hence you start looking into that, and eventually it ends up working. It also has a collection of affirmations, which I'm not going to go into too much into it, but Charlie Morgan gives you roughly what, one, two, three, four, five, six pages of affirmation, 6, 7 pages of affirmation, and he tells you to just pick and choose from them which ones are useful for you, and just go through that, right? And I'm going to get more into that later. Now, the first thing is to literally just sharpen the basics. Everything he tells you in the mindset module, and I'm going to assume that you watched the mindset module and you've done all of the things that he's told you. Just sharpen all of the basics. So this is read the self-transcendence workbook day and night. Do all of the things like tracking your metrics, which is let's say whether you worked out today or not, whether you slept on time, whether you are getting good sleep, which you can do something like by like an Oura ring or an Apple Watch or something, and just accurately log them and see how well you're doing in all of these things, as well as your business. So this could be how many outages you've done and so on. Now, the next thing is to, when you're making this or when you're remaking it, just really make sure that you have an accurate vision of your becoming self, and you have an accurate understanding of your current self. So for example, Charlie Morgan talks about, just in the video I saw today, he talks about 3 essential reasons of why people may do may start an online business, and that is for, firstly, cloud reasons, for a desire for freedom, and thirdly, a desire for self-expansion and growth. Now, you can say that there's a right path, there's a wrong path, but this is all just based on preference and what you want out of your life. However, for the most part, if you want growth, you can probably say that explorer is the first one, then somewhere in the middle is the cloud or the social, what's it called, the social importance one, and the third one, which is arguably the best one for growth, is the self expansion one, which is basically expanding your ability, your control, your domain of control which you have in your life, in your business, and everything else, right? And so these are the things that you need to take into account. And when you have an accurate vision, when you have an accurate understanding of who you are, who you want to be, what your values are, what your goals are, then you can effectively make a becoming self which reflects that, someone you actually want to become, and take action towards that because you truly resonate with it. And then there's things like asking yourself whenever you're lost, or just in general, what would my becoming self do? How would my becoming self do this thing? How would my becoming self do that action? And overall, just finding, when you start doing this sort of mental exercise of what would my becoming self do, you eventually start to act like it. It eventually becomes automatic, and then you slowly start becoming that sort of person. Now, another thing that he talks about is setting standards. So I'm not going to show too much, but I have made standards for myself right here, and these are the oscillatory patterns that Charlie Morgan talks about, which is basically your patterns of uh, what's it called, patterns of behavior, which is your lowest amount of action, your highest amount of action, and whatever you have in the middle will be your average, will be your monthly performance or yearly performance or whatever you want to use, right? And so what you want to do is set the standards even of a minimum to a high. What you count as a cheat meal is, like, let's say a high protein snack, whereas what another person counts as a cheat meal is like a, I don't know, a freaking burger or some crap, right? So by just doing that, you improve your health, you improve the amount of protein that you're getting, the good protein, and your overall health, right? And so that results in you overall being healthier, happier, coming closer to your becoming self. You can also do this in your business, you can also do this in your in terms of your fitness, in terms of many things. Now, this is the number one of sharpening basics. The second is, when you are doing the revision of all of these mindset modules and things, you want a book which is very complementary. Complementary meaning that it really benefits and it causes a synergy between the mindset module and the information that is present in the book. Just by a few chapters, you can find if a book is actually synergistic or not with the mindset modules and with your current growth. Okay. So the first time that you are watching the mindset module, I want you to do nothing of the sort. I want you to just focus on the essentials, just getting the mindset module inside of you. The second time you do, you eventually start seeing synchronicities. You eventually start noticing more semiotic patterns inside of your life, wherein you notice these sorts of things, which is the essence, the first principle essence of Charlie Morgan's mindset module is neuro-linguistic programming. The words that you use, the words that you employ inside of your head result in your reality, result in the actions that you take, the actions that you are comfortable taking. And so changing them, changing the words, is the essence of what Charlie talks about. So, and one book which I found really useful in my second read, I believe, is The Courage to Be Disliked, which is based on Alfred Adler, who is one of the big three psychologists who were in Vienna, who started the big psycho neurolinguistic, uh, what's it called, psychoanalysis club, which is Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, and Alfred Adler. I hated Sigmund Freud. I'll get to that later. And essentially, what The Courage to Be Disliked taught me is that I have far more increased autonomy and confidence around identity change, around my actions, that I can do that if I am truly motivated by a sense of happiness, by a sense of contributing towards society, and having a feeling of homeliness inside of it, right? Now, another thing is that Adler worked for me. I want you to take that really inside of your mind. Adler worked for me because I lacked this specific facet or in my psyche. However, for someone else, Freud can work. For someone else, Carl Jung can work. Carl Jung focuses a lot on mass, on the mass psychology, what the collective thinks in totality, right? And he is really useful for Charlie Morgan, the one who made the Imperium Academy program. He is the reason why businesses can have a customer archetype, a customer uh, what's it called, a customer map, so we can effectively target them. And so he is useful, and I will need to go more into that. And I used to like him a lot in my youth. On the other hand, one of the best propagandist, one of the best marketers of the 20th century was Edward L. Bernays, and he really, really loved Sigmund Freud's work. So I need to look into him eventually in order for me to get better in terms of doing better marketing. However, this is not the limiting factor for me right now. It is what's it called, iteration of the product and product development and research and whatnot. And so this is what I'm focusing on. Eventually it will be something else, like, let's say, focusing more on increasing my sales or anything else, or the good fit rate or anything else which I want to improve. However, right now this is the limiting factor, so I'm focusing more on that. Another book which I will recommend to you, which worked for me, is The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. He essentially showed me that there's always a connection between discipline and love. Discipline comes in the form of prioritizing, in terms of restricting certain parts of your mind, certain thoughts, or whatever, and instead just focusing on the thing which is in front of you, or getting to the thing which you need to be in front of. He talked about delayed gratification, all of these very simple things, how we explain them in such a beautiful and what's called practical manner that it really resonated with me. On the other hand, the thing that he talked about is his insights of love and how they connected with discipline, because the only reason a person can be disciplined long term beyond coercion or something like that is if he believes that he is doing something which improves himself, which improves his life. And so the definition of love that he gave is not one of possession, it's not one of cathexis, which he basically said identifying something which is external to you as inside of you. It is not something like protecting them needlessly, because that doesn't allow them to have eustress or good stress inside of their life, but instead just choosing to do the action which is the best one for your or your the loved one's spiritual growth. And so this is the most beautiful definition of love I found. And guess what, it isn't a one and done thing, which is love is like you always give them chocolates or something, right? That's all, that will eventually turn out bad. That's more like pacification rather than actually love. Love, hence, in this context, is being judicious and choosing whether is quality important right now, let's say, or is quantity important? Is does the person actually need to be a little bit more online? In some cases, that's true. Or does the person need to be a little bit more offline? Does the person need to have more talks with their friends? Or does the person need to have some alone time? And we need to figure all these things out and give them accurate, effective advice. One way I really struggled with this is that I didn't want to intervene. I really didn't like to intervene in people's life or force them to do things. And I realized that, guess what? You cannot force anyone to do anything. And even if you do, that will have some consequences, either in terms of the relationship or legally, either of which you don't really want. So, what you can do is see how you can positively affect them, how you can make sure that they are ready for the advice and then take actions accordingly. Because it was a very hard lesson, and I'm sure it sounds basic in retrospect. It was a very hard lesson for me to realize that you cannot just hit everything with a hammer, because everything isn't a nail. And this was something which took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out, though I'm only a teenager. Not long. So, another is an essentials affirmation list. So, I told you that Charlie Morgan gave us roughly 5, 6, 7 something pages of affirmations, all of which have different things. A lot of them are about mindset, because that's beginners, that's what you really want to focus on. Some of them are about what's it called, sales, others are about research and development, others are about something else. And all of these are useful, right? All of these will be useful at one point or another. However, at any point of your journey, you will have something which you are more in requirement of, and then having an essentials list wherein you make sure that the other things which matter, like for example having one affirmation for sales, having one affirmation for product development, having one affirmation for something else, all of these are present. However, you make sure that the thing which is lacking or you feel lacking in front of you is the one which is targeted, is the one which is effectively hammered into, right? And so, again, as I said, beginners need to work on everything. Some things, however, are more important at different stages. And affirmation is a very, at least to me, intensive process, right? And the way Charlie Morgan describes it is that you firstly, of course, say the words, you have them in your mind, then you close your eyes and you imagine them being true, imagine them being acted upon, and then you attach an emotion to them. I'm grateful for this, I'm thankful for this, I feel powerful, I feel confident, I feel uh, honest or some kind, anything which is related to that, anything which supplements your current self and instead takes you towards your becoming self. And after you've done that, you choose the biggest, most limiting factor. You write out all of the beliefs you have in regards to that. You inverse all of these beliefs. So, what would happen if all of these beliefs were the exact opposite? And then you just maybe change up the wording a little, add some emotion next to that. So, let's say that I had a belief that diet is something very hard to control for most people because of finances. And then I inverse that belief. Diet is very easy to control if you are smart with it, and diet is very easy to control if you're smart with it, and you will find yourself happier and saving more money long term, right? Something like that. And I do this and I feel grateful. I add that in the end of the sentence. Doing something like that and then reading it out every single day, I will eventually come to believe it and I will eventually will start acting it out, and hence that will improve my life. Now, another thing which you can do, and I think this is the one which is working well for me, is that you choose one of these single affirmations. You of course read them day and night before and after sleeping. But like you choose one of them and then you read them when you're in bed, when you're about to sleep, and you just keep repeating that inside of your mind when you're on your bed and until you go to sleep. And I think that one is by far the most powerful, and that's the one that I've been using. You just choose one very simple one, which is like one or two lines at max, 1.5 lines, even better, and then you just focus on that one, and then you just continue feeling it, you just continue visualizing it, you just continue being in that. And because you're in this almost half sleep dream state, even if you continue doing it long enough, it also becomes meditative, it also becomes very very strong as an affirmation. Now of course you can change all of these, and you can, let's say, if the most effective time to do affirmations for you is like right after you've woken up or right after you've taken a shower, then you do that perhaps, then you do something else. But you want to be in what people would call an auto-suggestive state, which is basically you are more open to these affirmations, you are more open to these spiritualizations, whatever you want to call them. Now, last one is making it easy to access. So, for example, the thing that I've done is my self transcendence workbook, which I just showed you. I have that. One second. Yeah, I have that right here, and I can just read that whichever page I want, and I can just open that, and whenever I want, I can read that. It could be on a bedside, it could be when the light is off, it could be when the light is on, it could be when I'm walking, whenever I want, right? And I have put this in damn near every single area that I could. I have not printed it out, that's my fault. I'm going to do that eventually when I get a printer and stuff. However, I've put it on my iPad, I've put it on my Kindle, as you can see. I've put the essential affirmations, the essential ones which I need to read out every single day, which are the most important, on here. I've put it on my MP3 player, I've put it on my phone, I've put it on my laptop, I've put it every single place which I actually would frequent it, which I actually would read it, right? And so by identifying these places, these key areas, I can make sure that I always have it at hand and I can always read it, and get the insights of my becoming self. Now, all of these things will only work if you take the time to actually do this. And for that, you actually need to believe in that, and to believe that, you actually need to see it working. And there's plenty of examples you can find on school.com/imperium. Imperium is spelled IMPERIUM, and you just go to that school.com/imperium and you will find plenty of these examples. Now, this is all. Let's see if it works out. I think it will work out, and I'm very confident, and hope you all the best. Cheers.